Hello and welcome to On a Mission, the show where we share inspiring conversations with phenomenal women who are creating success and prosperity in their lives with purpose and passion. I'm Pauline Rohdich, a success mindset coach and clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm on a personal mission to remind you that you are a beautiful soul and you have so much potential. And my intention for this show is to give you the nudge to answer your own calling and to rise up and take on your life's mission. So welcome everybody. I am here today on this episode of On a Mission with the wonderful Rachel Dubber. Rachel Dubber is an award-winning, internationally acclaimed artist. And I had the great pleasure of meeting Rachel for the first time about 3.5 years ago when we both were on a program called Empower Her. And I've watched some of her journey, but Rachel's here with us today to tell us about her mission, her vision for the future. She's a very passionate, amazing woman, and it's a great joy and a real privilege for me to introduce Rachel Dubber to you all. Rachel, welcome, and how are you?
Thank you. I'm brilliant. It's great to have this opportunity to chat with you. Thanks.
Well, Rachel, look, I'm in awe of anybody who can draw because it was one of my least, one of my worst abilities, shall we say, and I failed art in school. But I've since actually said maybe it was just that teacher that didn't like what I did. She said I wasn't an artist, and I actually took it to heart. And of course, I equated that to meaning I wasn't creative for many, many years afterwards. But look, the truth is, I'm really not an artist, but you are. And I would love you to tell us about the journey. How long have you known that this was what you wanted to do? And just tell us about your upbringing and your in relation to your art as well, and what inspires the type of art that you do.
Um, well, I guess to be quite honest, I didn't think I was going to become a full-time professional artist because I suppose like that growing up in school when you're looking for a career, you go where your heart wants to go, and mine was leading me towards working with horses. So like I'd always drawn, and even in school I was winning prizes, even in like I'd won the competition in the Galway Advertiser many years ago. President Higgins actually presented me with my award at that time,
Really?
which
Really? Okay,
yeah,
I didn't realize that.
now I didn't win outright. I was second, but I still have the award that was given to me all those years ago. And I suppose art was really put on the back burner because my mum used to create and make dresses and wedding dresses, and she was always making and creating. So we kind of felt when we were, sew this little bit over here or do this little bit of knitting over here, that it was an everyday thing, and it wasn't something I want to pursue as a full-time career. So I wanted to get away from that. And I was born with a passion for horses. And even like I think many a time I was brought to the doctors and mum would say, will she grow out of this? And he goes, yeah, of course she will. She'll get sense along the way at some point or another, and she will grow out of it. But I actually never did. And I don't believe that if you have an inner passion that ever leaves you, that you ever grow out of it. I think it can be thwarted or stumped by what people can say,
Mhm.
but that passion is always
Fair.
there.
Yeah.
It burns from deep within your core.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, even with your mom perhaps not wanting to encourage that, her being the creative, um, despite that, she obviously allowed or encouraged you in some way to pursue that.
Yeah, she did. And look, I think, my grandparents were even the same. And as much as I grew up in Gerard with my grandparents when we were younger. So my love of nature and animals was really nourished there. The
Mm.
creativity was nourished
I know,
there.
but it's a beautiful part of the world. I'm a bit biased too because
Fabulous. No,
we're
no.
both in County Galway, and while I don't hail from Galway, my father is a Connemara man, so I claim it as my
Yeah.
own. I feel very much at home out there. I love it so much.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? I was just thinking there as you were speaking, because I've met so many people, being when I have my therapist hat on, that often come to me later in life feeling very low and sad and depressed because their creativity was not encouraged by a parent. you know, and so it was suppressed, and they went into the left brain types of jobs, accountancy and law and various things like that. But it was so interesting that you had a mother who was very much supportive of that.
She was, to a certain extent, you know, and I think, like, as a child, I wanted to be a vet. My grandfather was the first one that said, you can't do that. Women
Okay.
just aren't vets. And he was old school. Now, he was a very talented and creative man with his hands. Like, he was always weaving baskets. He was a wall maker, a mason.
Yeah.
Can't even think of the word now, it stumped me. But like, a lot of the work he's done still remains in Connemara today. He
Wow.
was renowned for his skills at building walls, dry stone walls, and the
Yes. Yeah.
ordinary little walls and houses. So
Beautiful.
he was not only like a little farmer, because they didn't have a big farm, but he was creative in the sense that he was able to make work and generate work for himself. And my
Mm.
gran was the one who did all the baking and the sewing, and we took all of that on board as well when we were kids growing up. But I suppose your parents always look to see that you find a career that will bring you money and, you know,
Security, and
yeah,
yeah,
security, and something that isn't dangerous.
yeah. And I mean, horse riding or even art would be both considered to be dangerous for a lot of parents, wouldn't they? Because I think, how the heck can you make the poor artist syndrome sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, which is something I actually cannot abide. And I
No,
think,
no, me. I'm saying it flippantly because, I mean, for goodness sake, it should not be the case and doesn't have to be the case,
correct.
especially when you're a passionate artist, as you are. And of course, now you're reaping the rewards from that. But obviously, you had a beautiful sort of childhood insofar as where you lived, the environment you grew up in, and all that creativity around you. But also, you said something there really important about your grandfather, you know, knowing that he could create his own economy, which is language that I would use today in helping people to believe in themselves and recognize that they have gifts and talents. He was
Yeah.
doing it. Yeah, he was doing it. So you saw that happening.
Yeah, I did. And even like, we used to go to all the local shows. Gerard was a show where we always entered, whether it was knitted crafts or drawings or photography or baking or jam making, all of those things that is very Irish. It's
Yeah.
ingrained in your DNA. So you used to go to those things, participate with all of the other groups. And when you won, it was like a great recognition of your skills at home. So I suppose in one sense of the way, you kind of grow up going, like, I never took my art seriously until the last few years, where
Why
it,
was that, Rachel? Tell me why.
because I suppose people, yeah, the poor artists, people frown on it as a profession in the first place. And if you're not Banksy and making loads of money and in Sotheby's, it's just something, you do something. It's,
Yes.
and if you tell people you're an artist, they kind of look at you and they go, really? You don't look like one. So there's a preconceived idea of what an artist actually even looks like. But for me, I suppose I was raising a son and a family at the time. I was committed to helping my husband do what he was doing on his journey. And of course, raising my son and devoting my time to him. So art was an escape, and it was a way that I could make some money for myself. So I suppose it was seen more as a hobby and something I could do in my own time at my own leisure. And that was it. I could make some money or not make some money, depending on if I wanted to work or not want to work, because Kevin took care of everything else. So I was
Yes.
happy enough with the situation. And I think in
Yeah.
the last few years since Empower Her and a few courses later, well, plenty of courses later, I realized I actually have a career. This is a
You're a
career.
professional artist. But what was the turning point? Was there a moment? Was there a moment when you just said, "Oh my gosh," you know, had you already started that journey from when we met and you were designing your beautiful products? But when was that moment when you really did take yourself serious?
Um, I suppose I would always have taken myself serious, but I wouldn't have classified my career as serious.
Hmm.
So I knew I knew long before I went to Empower Start or Empower Her that I was able to do something for people that was positive, that was joyous, that brought joy to me and it brought joy to them by creating artworks. And, I think when you look at artists, you kind of go, oh my God, I'd love to own their work. I'd love to own their work. I've done the same. And that's how I started out, where I was going, I'd love to own that, but I could never buy it. So I started painting so I could actually have my own artwork, a piece of something that I loved and I created myself. But I think as the Empower Her, I was at a crisis in my career, I suppose, going, am I serious? Am I not serious? How do I get taken seriously? At what point do people look at you and go, yeah, you're a professional artist, you're good at what you do? And I suppose in a certain way, I was looking for acknowledgement and recognition.
Well, that generally comes from probably the lack of confidence, or maybe, maybe you're not seeing yourself as worthy perhaps of that acknowledgement. But
Oh,
now,
yeah.
which is what stops most of us. I mean, it's just that pure fear of being criticized. And let's face it, art, as long as anything else, exposes itself, doesn't it, to potential criticism, because art is a very personal thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's very subjective.
It's so
Absolutely.
subjective. Subjective
Yeah.
is probably the best word. So
Yeah.
it is. You hardly have any of your pieces around you handy there, have you? Just anything that you can show us right now?
Oh,
Even something that you're working on. Have you anything that you're working
I
on?
can't show you that because it's an actual commission, but I do have
That's
one.
okay.
I have one of my little pieces, which is Bob.
Yeah, well, look, this is what I want to lead up to actually, which is beautiful, on Ossel Biog, the lovely little donkey. But what I would love you to tell us, I mean, we have to go back to the horses for a second. I mean, these were no ordinary horses. They weren't piebald ponies now that you're talking about. So
No.
although I'm sure you love them too, can you please tell everybody the horses that you were riding?
Well, I started out my career in the stables here in Ireland, and I ended up teaching for probably about 3 years. And I got tired of the show jumping circuit
Mhm.
and decided I needed a career change. And at that point, not so much career change, but Ireland wasn't thriving and
Yes.
jobs were hard to come by.
So
And
how long ago is this? 80s?
it would have been about 84, 85, in or around there. So I decided I would apply for a job through the Horse and Hound in England. And I was offered the opportunity to either go to Boston or to go to Italy, to Milan. And I thought, oh, maybe I should go to Boston. That'd be really nice. But I couldn't get a visa.
Right.
So I thought, okay, next best thing, what'll I do? I'll go to Milan. So that was it. Packed my bags, headed off to Milan. And I worked for an Olympic show jumping yard there for a year. Enjoyed it for the little while, struggled as well to learn the language because I wasn't fluent in Italian, and went over thinking everybody speaks English, surely.
Not true.
No, not
No.
true. So I eventually learned to speak fluent Italian and
Well done.
decided to change from the show jumping yard to horse racing. So I was involved in horse racing for about 10 years and worked for a yard in Milan with.
And for those that don't understand what working for a yard actually means, like I have an idea. Can you explain what working for a yard actually means in relation to these race horses?
It involves getting up really early in the morning. You go down, you collect all your tools, and you head over to the horses that are given in your care.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have 3 horses or 4 horses, depending on how many horses were in the yard. We had a yard of 100 horses at that time. And if somebody didn't show up for work, then you took over their care duties as well. So it involved, look, you're a caretaker of an animal or animals, and you're responsible for their feeding, you're responsible for their clean beds, you're responsible for keeping them groomed, keeping them in shape. Once you've done all your morning yard duties, you're given the list of what horses you're riding out for that day, for that morning, because we used to exercise in the morning, and then afternoons it was the same routine as the morning, except you didn't ride out. And if there was races coming up, then you obviously had racing on in the evenings, whether it was away or at home. So yeah, but basically it's, you're a caretaker.
Did you ever have a scary moment though on one of these race horses? Speed and all of that kind of thing is coming to my mind.
Yeah, I did. I guess I was very fortunate. I never broke a bone. I had come off a few times, but it didn't deter me from doing what I did. And I mean, we used to ride horses without helmets. I mean, that was before the safety stuff kicked in. But I was dragged by my own horse at one point on the back of the arena after she had decided she was turning for home, and jumped a ditch and got dragged up the field. But I was lucky. I was so lucky that I didn't crack my skull open. But
I must admit, like, I don't know whether it's ignorance or what it is. I have done a little bit of cantering on a horse, and I had to do it because I remember it was actually in South Africa where I did it. When I worked for British Airways, we went down, and of course I was always up for doing something for at least once, you know.
yeah.
And so some of the crew, when I worked for British Airways, they were really big fans of horse riding back in the UK as well. So they said, let's go horse riding. There was some beautiful scenery, etc., etc. So of course that pulled me in. But I must admit, I mean, I wouldn't have been the most comfortable person sitting on a horse, I have to say. And I love them. They're the most beautiful animals. Oh my gosh, they're so stunning. I'm always mesmerized by the horse whisperer people. Would you say that you possess that? I have a feeling that you might, this kind of communication, especially based on your whole vision for the future, which you're going to tell us about.
I would hope I have a connection. I would hope I have a connection with animals in general, and that they know whether you're good or bad. That,
Gotcha.
you know.
I even see with our dogs.
Yeah,
They read your face, don't they? I
they
mean,
do.
I have my cross face, and the pup here at the moment, she's absolutely adorable. Even though I wanted to throttle her, and I did threaten her with the pound, I have to tell you, Rachel, both of them, in fact. So I've got an aging Labrador, she's almost 13, who has recovered from a stroke recently. And then we have a golden doodle who's almost 8 months old. So we've got the geriatric dog, and we've got the pup, probably not wise, but however, my son really wanted this puppy, and she is absolutely adorable. I have a cross face with her, and she knows it. She absolutely knows it. But she also knows, they read your energy, don't they? I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, I love it. I mean, we've a lot of fun around that because it's just fantastic. I love animals too, I have to admit. But look, going back to your art, are you happy to talk about the art again? Because what has influenced your art more than anything?
I suppose it's the ability to bring joy to people through art. You know, I know there are people like me who come to me because they love animals, whether it's a horse or a donkey or it's a cat, or I had a hedgehog. Somebody wanted me to draw a snake. Whatever their animal is, whatever they're passionate about, and being able to just draw that for them so they have a commemorative piece that stays in the family for years to come.
It's beautiful. You know? Like, so instead of the portrait of a human, you're creating these beautiful,
yeah, and instead of a photograph.
Yes, I know. Oh no, I mean, and it's also the passion and the love and the time spent, because I know that you are loving what you're doing. What's your favorite animal to draw?
Oh, can I say horse?
I thought you might, but I mean, is it actually the horse?
It still is. Yeah, yeah. Look, I specialized long ago in niching to horses. Horses were all I drew as a kid, so it was bound to come around at some point or another. And now, guaranteed, it wasn't any great shakes. When I started drawing them, I did like everybody else, the outline and the legs and the ears, and proportion wasn't always right, or perspective wasn't right. And I believe it's in everybody to be able to draw. it's fine-tuning and honing those skills. So when somebody tells me I'm not an artist, I usually go, well, that's the first thing you've done wrong. You've just said, I'm not an artist.
Yes, I know. I
And
know, because
everybody is.
everybody has the potential. I believe that too. I truly believe that now at this stage, because it's such, as you say, subjective. I mean, I've looked at art and I thought, oh my God, how are they getting away with that? But then
Yeah.
somebody else is drooling over it and paying millions for it, you know, whereas I wouldn't pay at tuppence perhaps. But at the same time, I really appreciate it. I've actually got a bit of art behind me here. It's very different. Now, this is spiritual kind of, he's an artist in California. It's called the Tree of Abundance. You probably recognize that, but it's beautiful. There's jewels and everything on it. I've loads of his stuff because I completely fell in love with it when I was training to be a yoga and meditation teacher, and I've loads of his work all over the house. But I love that. But there's so many different types of art that I appreciate, actually. But Rachel, what kind of schooling have you had around the art, and how have you trained in what you do?
Well, what I did as a mature student was I went back to college. So I did a year doing a portfolio to be accepted into college, did a diploma, and then I followed that with a degree. And at some stage, I would love to go and do my master's. It's been earmarked for a while, but at the time when I was applying, it wasn't available in Galway. And I believe now that that course is available here. So it's something I would eventually love to do for myself. And just, I loved the whole schooling process. I loved the energy that comes when there's a big group of people doing art and the crossover between the different mediums. It just, there's an energy in them.
Of course, it's everything's energy, and it's just being in the vibration with people that are sharing the love and the passion for something similar. It's just amazing. But I'd love to ask you a few more, shall we say, questions that really just all about you and your experience. So I want to ask you, what has been the most difficult decision you've ever had to make?
Yeah, putting my dog to sleep.
When was that?
That was 6 years ago.
I know, and it still
hurts like hell.
I know, and you were telling me before we started the interview. She was it a she?
It was a she.
Yeah, she was 7, and I had a similar experience. I had to put a dog down about 20 years ago actually, and our dog was only 3. And I still cry over that. And in fact, when our lab had the stroke there a matter of weeks ago, I thought it was happening all over again, and I was absolutely brokenhearted. So I understand. I mean, really, it's a great sign though to have that sensitivity, to be honest with you. I mean, to be so empathetic to animals as well, because they are part of a family, aren't they?
Oh, they are. And it's just, I suppose each one is so different, and they bring something very different into your life to teach you.
Yeah.
And I just don't think she got the chance to stay long enough.
But obviously taught you lots.
She did. And it's strange because for the first few years, I couldn't even talk about her. I wouldn't talk about her. I couldn't open my mouth. But I can relate to the people who've gone through that process.
Yeah.
When they approach me with their dogs or cats or, whatever animal it is, horses that they've had and passed. And so that I can relate to that empathy. And I know that connection. I know that bond. And people think,
I suppose that potentially could be part of the reason why she moved on as she did, to make space for you to have that degree of empathy for your customers and clients.
Possibly, but I had it long before she moved on.
I know, I appreciate that, but perhaps even more pronounced that you feel the rawness of it yourself, the emotion. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're able to bring that through in your work, no doubt.
I would hope so. I've been told that the customers have come back, and I see the customers as you are seeing me right now, an emotional blubbing mess going, oh my God, like, how did you manage? But I don't know how I managed, because I was explaining to somebody the other day, you're not, as an artist, you're not always able to sit in front of somebody's dog, or somebody's dog isn't always available to sit in front of you.
Mhm.
So you have to get as much feeling as possible from a flat dimensional
I
plane.
know. Yeah.
But to be able to actually pull out the essence and the
Personality and
personality, I don't know where that comes from. It just does. And it just comes when I'm in the zone or in the flow and doing the work.
and speaking of which, you're just leading beautifully into my next question. It may be relevant to what you've just said. When do you feel your strongest connection, shall we say, to the higher self, spirit, God, universe, whatever you're happy to call it?
Oh, mostly if I'm outside in nature. But I know that I have, and it may sound really strange to say I have an escape route. If I'm not in nature where I feel,
Create it almost, you can create it.
yes, so
Mhm.
I can escape through an artwork, a drawing. I put on some music in the background and I can zone out to everything else that's going on and just lose myself in there. I used to paint until early hours of the morning and not even realize most of the time had even fleeted.
But isn't that the beauty of when you really are living your passion?
Yeah, I think so.
And your purpose, because time escapes you. I mean, isn't that a beautiful place to be in? Instead of checking the time for when you have to finish whatever you're doing, a mundane job or task, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that so? You often hear people say, when you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Does it feel that way?
absolutely. I've said it all my life, because even when I worked in the lowliest of jobs with, I was involved with horses. I didn't care if I never got paid. I didn't care if I didn't have a big luscious dinner on the table. A tin of beans and some crackers were
Yeah,
perfect.
I
And
know.
I've often had a tin of beans and that was it. That was dinner, or a dinner for a few days. But it didn't bother me. I loved and just lived what I did.
But I mean, it's very obvious. I mean, I know that from knowing you personally, but also what I've seen you create, Rachel. It's just absolutely fantastic. What I would love to ask you, if you had the opportunity of having dinner with somebody that that you really admired, who would that be?
Dinner with somebody I really admire.
And especially in relation to perhaps your work, somebody who could guide you.
Do you know, I think it would be St. Francis of Assisi.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I understand he's the saint of the animals, isn't he? So yeah, I mean, there was a quote of his came up today under my radar, something I read actually. So there you go, St. Francis of Assisi. He's obviously in the house, as they say. So tell me why.
Because of his devotion,
Mhm.
because he came from a family that were quite well off, but he decided that it was totally irrelevant to him, um, and that his care and love and passion were more for the environment and for animals than they were for material things. So I think he would be the person I'd love to sit down and have dinner with.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. I think that's absolutely gorgeous. So what about your vision for the future?
My vision for the future.
What's
Well, I would hope that I make a difference. I'd love to make a difference in the lives of animals, whether that's through donations to the animal sanctuary, or whether that's through opening up my own little sanctuary and educating my grandchildren into a better future,
yes.
and knowing things aren't always the way that they seem, or what somebody says to you, don't take that as being concrete. Question it, always question it,
Yeah.
so yeah, like, I don't think I'm going to be a multi-billionaire that I can Bill Gates and I can do. I'd love to be, because I think I would make a whopping great big difference at that point.
Absolutely. So why not?
Well, I'll put it out to the universe, and if the lotto wants to fall and land in my lap, that would be perfect.
or attracting the right customers perhaps for your works, and then just spreading the word that way, as I know many other artists are in the homes of the very, very wealthy and affluent in the world. Why not yours?
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. That's very
And
true.
so when the bigger purpose is the sanctuary that has your mark on it, and perhaps you mentioned earlier, but I want to ask you, so you're on this mission, right? What is your mission? Tell everybody what your mission is.
My mission is to bring joy to people. It's to make them aware that animals cross our paths for a reason, and they're in our lives for a reason. They're there to bring you joy, or to make you realize to live in the moment. There's and I suppose there are people who either do love them or don't love them. There's and the people who are on the fence. And I think if you're on the fence and you don't love them, you're missing out on something that is so, so pure.
Absolutely. Unconditional love, 24/7.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
24/7. If I ever have a cross face with Luna, she still loves me and I love her. But it's just so much fun too. But yeah, no, I mean, and you also mentioned though, before we came on live, as they say, the legacy that you want to leave.
The legacy. Remind me what it was, because
Well, your legacy really was, I suppose, again, for your grandchildren, and just to teach people about the power of animals and to take care of them, and just the importance of the relationship.
Yeah, and to raise awareness that like they are for life, for as long as you actually get to enjoy their lives.
Mhm.
They're not commodities that should be just brought in and disposed of when, oh, I'm off to do my holiday in the Barbados, and get rid of your pets. And I think most people are well educated, and when they do commit to an animal, they know it's for life, until death do you part. That's literally how it is.
But
But
sadly, that's not always the case, though, Rachel.
no, it isn't. And sadly, and I suppose that's where the donkeys came into it for me. It was that people were abusing them, and leaving them out in fields to become crippled by overgrown hooves, or not enough food, or covered in worms and scabies, and some of the
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, when you've witnessed that, I can well and truly understand that that is going to break your heart,
Yeah,
and becomes often the mission and the passion. Because
yeah,
I'm always helping people to, well, at least I help people as part of the work that I do, to find their passion. And a lot of people struggle with it, they really struggle with their passion, or their purpose at least. But one way that often gets people to really think, actually, yes, the light bulb goes on, if you like, is when they ask themselves, well, what breaks my heart? Because sometimes then that releases something from within, that, well, actually, I do want to do something about this. And then they become very purposeful and passionate. Um, so obviously you would have seen that. And of course, working very closely with animals all your life and being around them has been hugely instrumental, obviously, in your work now as a professional artist, in all your beautiful product range, which I'm encouraging everybody to go to your website, racheldubber.com, and to have a look at what you have created, which is absolutely beautiful and phenomenal.
thank
I know
you.
you have a lot of books behind you. I'm asking now, are you reading a book at the moment?
I am. I'm reading Niamh Fitzpatrick's
Yeah.
book. What's it called? Tell Me the Truth About Loss.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, it was a book I had noticed some time back. I knew the story of her sister Dara, who was Dara Fitzpatrick, the
Yes.
helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
I had heard about Niamh writing a book, and the journey, documenting the journey of the loss of her sister, and
Yeah.
breakdown in her marriage at the time, and Dara's child that was being left behind, and the possibility of her losing her house. Now, she's a psychologist, so you kind of assume that they can manage catastrophes and disasters.
And
And
grief and loss. Yeah.
it is a revelation in grief and anxiety and fear, and just her life with her sister and her family, and how how short it was. So I haven't finished it yet. I was.
No, and I haven't read it, but I'm aware of the book. I'm aware of Niamh Fitzpatrick. Yeah, but I mean, grief is, again, it's very personal, very subjective too. I mean, everybody handles it differently, but we're human at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But hopefully we have, I mean, as a psychologist and therapist, you have skills to help you overcome. But at the end of the day, it depends on how deep you've loved somebody too, isn't it? And their loss can often be much more pronounced.
Yes, and I think it was also the outpouring of sympathy and, having people you could speak to and talk to, and who understood the fact that no matter how professional you are, no matter what you do, once grief comes knocking on your door and hits you like a bolt of lightning, there's no turning back from it. And it's how you go forward and how you adjust and how you cope with situations from day to day. So yeah, and it's lovely to see that rawness being put out into her book in the hope that she can help somebody else.
Of course. And I mean, she's in a prime position to be able to help other people as well. So, I mean, I'm a great believer that things happen for us. I mean, death is inevitable for all of us, our loved ones. None of us know who's going first either.
Yeah.
None of us know who's next, but it's an inevitability. And I mean, I certainly don't dwell on it, but there's the odd occasion that I feel a little bit, especially when it comes to my parents, who are both living, and as they're aging, I'm always, it's there, the awareness is there, especially with this year that we've had with COVID, etc., heightened awareness around their vulnerability.
Yeah.
And other people have experienced the same thing. But I suppose really what I'm saying is that grief is part of a process, but things happen for us. And I think those that step up and use their life experiences to help other people, I mean, you're doing it in your art. Would you say?
Yeah, it would be, because I suppose the artwork is a connection for the person with their dog or their cat or their horse, and it's that bond and that memory that keeps being ignited in a happy way.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's so much art, and your art would be one of those kind of collections where it's you can feel the energy of the animal in actual fact. And I mean, art can speak. So I mean, yeah, your art would speak. And so I can understand when it's very personalized, that it really is a beautiful heirloom to have in a household as well. And for people that really appreciate animals, I think you're doing an amazing job. Obviously, I think your art is absolutely fantastic and spectacular. And obviously, I wish you every success in the world, Rachel, and whatever comes for you going forward. And I know you're very committed, very dedicated, and you're a phenomenal woman on a mission. I want to thank you for your time today. And I'm sure that everybody listening in and watching this is also going to love you too. So remember, it's racheldubber.com. This lady is spectacular, amazing, and her art is now all over the world. So let's support her too. And let's really think about our animals. She's really brought it home how important they are to all of us, and that they are very special and they can teach us something. No doubt about that. Rachel, an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Pauline.
So grateful for having this opportunity with you today. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this show so that you will be notified when the next episode is released. And remember, keep believing. You're amazing and you have so much to give. Now is your time.